Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. This is episode 11. My name is Kyle, and of course, we've got CJ here. How are you, sir, this evening?
Good. I'm doing well. How about yourself? How you doing?
Doing okay. Really tired. Busy weekend, but
Yeah,
so yeah,
I
and it
feel
was a
that
long week at work too. So
this was a interesting week at work, so I
yeah,
feel that too. Yeah, I get that. And then the whole thing with the because I don't know how much you got of it, but in New York we got a lot of that wildfire from Canada. The
yeah. We got very little.
you did,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think there was one morning I woke up and I went, "Wow, it looks really kind of foggy or smoky out," and then it was fine.
yeah. Wednesday, because we're recording on a Saturday night, so Wednesday it was quite bad by us out on the island, but I know in the
Hmm.
city it was bad, and then like if you went up north it was even worse. um it got bad throughout the day on Wednesday. Like you went outside, it smelled like a campfire, and it just felt like this campfire got worse and worse and worse.
Right, right.
I turned orange. So I just feel bad for those in Canada that are dealing with this,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
that it's over by the time you listen to this.
Yep,
um, um Otherwise, yeah, just one of those work weeks.
yep. You hear that? Ugh.
uh, Listening to anything good this week?
So I've been on a Corey Wong and Mike Farris journey. So
Journey.
listen to both of them.
Okay.
So I realized that Corey Wong has a lot more stuff out than I thought he'd had, and he's got like 4 or 5 live albums that I've been listening to. In fact, streamed one of them Friday night, um, and it just came out last month. I had no idea. So
Oh, okay. I gotta check that out.
yeah, yeah. Victor Wooten's on it, and this really great group called Truesdale is on it. So,
Okay.
and we'll probably play them tomorrow night. So,
Okay, cool.
because they did a cover of a pretty cool
Tomorrow,
song.
tomorrow night, meaning the night that passed.
Yes, the night that you've all missed. So,
You've all missed. That's good to know, though, because I was curious if they recorded the tour that Victor Wooten was on with him.
I think this is the one before that tour because it
Okay.
came out in May, and he's only on like 4 or 5 tracks.
Okay.
Um, but they do a cover of a Victor Wooten tune. They do a cover of a Bella Fleck tune.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
And
it's
I
pretty
just
cool.
noticed on Instagram that he's to this Saturday night. Um, he- uh, he's playing with Bella Fleck and the Flecktones tonight.
Yep, first time in 3 years.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
which is very cool.
yep.
Yeah.
So what about you? You listen to anything?
Um, Corey Wong
Okay,
and Hannah Wicklund.
nice.
That's pretty much been most of it.
Okay,
Lately, I've been getting in the car and I have not put any music on.
me too.
It's weird. It was one
Yeah.
of those weeks where I just like got in the car and I just drove to work and I didn't put any music on.
Mm-hmm.
And then leaving work, I would typically like roll down the windows and do it, but I guess because of how everything was the past few days, I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So but typically it was basically Corey Wong and Hannah Wicklund the past few times that I've listened to the music.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm excited about her new album coming out in
Yeah,
October.
me too. I want to hear what it sounds like. I'm really interested to see what she comes out with.
Right, exactly. But that's about it. Not
Okay.
much of anything else. Like even at work, we haven't even had an opportunity to really listen to a lot of music because, like I said, sometimes I share with a coworker,
Right.
and we haven't had the opportunity. It's been a busy week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so you said you played Kari Wong and Mike Farris,
Mike Farris. Yep.
and you didn't play anything else outside of that.
That's really it.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep.
Do you want to jump into the book?
Yeah, let's jump in the book. So we're getting to the end. We've got what, 3 chapters left, I think.
3 chapters.
So,
Not very long chapters,
no.
but very poignant chapters.
Yes. Yep. As usual.
Yeah, as usual. Well, there was a couple that kind of like, yeah, but these, like some of them were like very good, but like
Mm-hmm.
these, as short as they are, have so much more information than some of those other ones.
Right. Yep.
It's like the revelation of the book.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this
We are
is, I know I said Sam's chapter is probably my favorite. This is a very close second, if not equal or better. I like this chapter a lot.
Oh, I could totally see that. And at first I was kind of like, again, was there's a lot to look at and potentially highlight, but there's also
Mm-hmm.
a lot to not highlight
Right.
because of the story aspect of this chapter. So
Yep.
I'm very curious about. I'm sure we're very similar again, but I'm very curious to see where it led you.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
so this is chapter 11, which is measure 11, and it's entitled "Listening."
Yep.
And I don't know if you want to read the little subtitle.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to it, in the chapter itself, but it says, we think that music stops at the ears. That is a mistake. Vibrations can be felt in all places and at all times, even with the eyes. And that's kind of, I mean, maybe we'll talk about it more when we get to it in the chapter, but um, this that's kind of what I felt like when I started the podcast back in the day. It was very much listening differently, and when I listened to the audiobook of the second book, it's almost like I lost it, and I kind of came back to it, but like listening in a different way, and it's hard for me to keep that listening in that different way. And I think that's part of it is that thing that we were talking about in the other book that I'm reading, Awakening Spirits, where it's that battle of the physical and the spiritual mind, and the physical
Right.
is more dominant and the spiritual, but um, trying to find that balance is difficult. Um, and I don't always do a good job of doing both. So, yeah.
Well, I also think environmentally, it's a tough balance to do,
Hmm.
especially in our line of work.
Yeah, and as a society, the society pushes the physical mind on us.
Right.
So,
Exactly. And I think that because we take for granted how much the environment that we're in plays a factor on our balance.
hmm.
I think that's part of it. Like I set up my office in such a way that I felt like it worked for my balance. And there are times that I walk in and I'm like, could I make this better?
Hmm.
Because this is where you and I do our thing all the time. Or if
Right.
I come in and I need to do some artwork or whatever, or any type of video or music work, I come in here and I wanted some kind of like, lack for a better term, like feng shui
Hmm.
to the room. And
Right.
it's hard to find that balance sometimes, even in your own personal environment.
Right.
So I totally get what you're saying,
Yep.
which makes this whole chapter so interesting.
Yep.
Uh, it's too funny.
So, this takes place after the previous chapter where they played a gig. Oh, Michael, they watched a gig essentially, and then they played a little bit during that. And then they drove to a place called Radnor Lake. Um, and I'm just looking for my first highlight, and it comes actually later than I thought, 2:35. So anyway, they basically this whole experience is a listening experience, and I've said many times that I think probably the most important skill as a musician is listening. Um, and I think it's a skill that we don't do enough as musicians, and it's also a skill that we don't do enough as humans. And they touched on it in this where they talk about the difference between listening and hearing. I think a lot of what we do here in our lives is we do too much hearing, and we concentrate on waiting for a pause in the conversation so we can interject instead of actually listening to what's being said to react to it.
Totally agree. And I'm definitely a culprit of that.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? I definitely like have done that without thinking about it. Like you don't I think it becomes almost such a second nature to the human race to do that.
Yeah.
I think we're almost not shown to do it, we're kind of taught to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And I
think
think
that's
again, that's that physical spiritual mind thing that we're talking about. I think.
exactly, I agree. And I myself over the past few weeks have been a little bit more on the I'm trying to listen more to whomever's speaking to me versus, hearing what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's but it's a tough thing to kind of train yourself to do after doing the other things so often.
Right, right, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny, like I know I talked about doing tangents last week, and you've kind of mentioned a few things tonight that kind of, you know, so a lot of my journeys at work or to work and from work, I are in silence as well. And because they've got the Jeep now, I got the top down most of the time. In fact, I don't remember the last time I had the top up. It'll probably up tomorrow because it's going to rain. But um, it's weird. Like 2 weeks ago, I remember driving to work and noticing the blue sky being bluer than normal, the trees being greener, and the sound of everything as I was driving. And one of the things I hate about my car is it's got auto stop start, which drives me nuts. I hate it.
Yes.
But what I was noticing is like I get to the point where I'd stop at a stoplight and the car would shut off and I could hear everything better. I was like, kind of like this. So I'm starting to pay
Okay.
attention to everything around me more. And that's what I was kind of referring to last week was like I'm feeling that transition to I don't know whether it's accepting the spiritual mind more or acknowledging it or being less focused. I don't know. I don't know what it is yet, and it was less this week, and I'm trying not to get discouraged because um I don't want to go backwards. So but it's interesting. And I found it's hard to drive now because I find myself like looking at the clouds more and it's like I got to be focusing on the road like, it's
Right.
weird.
But I think part of this process, it's okay to go backwards a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that part of going backwards is a way of you kind of going, okay, now I understand why this happens, and now I
Mhm.
understand why that happens, and
Right.
and it's hard because you don't want like
Mhm.
'cause you almost think of it as like a failure in a sense,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I think that's one of the things that I have the hardest thing to jump over. It's like I tell everybody all the time, it's okay if you make a mistake. It's
Mhm.
okay if you quote unquote fail at this
Right.
because you're going to learn from it. But like for some reason mentally, I can't take my own advice when it comes to that. So I
Exactly. Yep.
understand that concept that thing where it's like I really don't want to go backward because that means I didn't do it right. But it's
Mhm.
like maybe you did do it right. Maybe
Right.
maybe going backwards is the step that you need to take to jump forward into the next step.
Right. And what I've been trying to tell myself is, the yin yang has been so important in this book. It's like and it's the same thing. Like in order to go forward, you have to go backwards.
Right.
And Victor Wooten said I remember during the pandemic I was able to it was right around the time I got let go from my job too. It was kind of a weird, time. And he was doing a webinar. He was very quiet for most of it. It was him, Bootsy Collins, and a bunch of other bass players. And at one point, they asked him, with all the crazy stuff that's going on, like what do you do? What do you say to this? And he said, I look at it like a slingshot. In order to go forward, you got to pull the slingshot back. The further you pull it back, the further it goes. So you might feel like you're really far behind right now, and that's a good thing because it's going to propel you further and faster in the future.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, I think
okay,
that's a very yeah. No, totally. That makes so much sense.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Which it's funny because I feel like in this chapter that's essentially what happens.
right.
Because throughout every chapter he's listening to everything that Michael's saying and he's listening to everything he's showing him and whatever all that stuff. But like chapter 11, measure 11, which is essentially the last element
Right.
is we're back to listening.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going back to this.
Yep.
And then as you go through the chapter, you notice that every element that they went through the rest of the book comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. So you said you were highlighted where? Where's your first highlight on this?
235.
So 235 is what I have as the first page of the chapter.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't
Hang
be.
on.
I want to see if I'm on the right spot with you.
238, sorry.
Okay, so I kind of marked some things on 236 and 237.
Okay, go for it.
So I'm gonna give a little bit of that. Just a little background is like they're sitting in a forest or in the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking about listening to the sounds of the animals and the insects, and they talk about how it almost sounds like a well orchestrated thing, a symphony.
Right.
Um, and this is what Victor says: I hadn't noticed it before, but the animals did seem to be listening to each other. It sounded like the different species were taking turns singing. When the animals did speak on top of each other, they did so in a different register. It was like listening to a well orchestrated masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting because we never think about, we know animals as prey and predators, right? But
Right.
like in this moment, all these prey and all these predators are singing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was very interesting. And then to your point of what you were stating earlier, Michael states that we have forgotten as a species how to listen.
Yep.
Yeah, so that, just to reiterate what you were talking about earlier. So that's kind of what I highlighted in those 2 pages, and I think they speak for themselves. I don't think I have to
Yeah, I
get
think
into
so
them.
too.
Yeah, but so now that brings us to 238. So what do you got on 238 that you highlighted?
So, oh God, here we go again.
Where
No,
do I
not that
put
way.
the Kindle?
There we go. How about there? I think it's good. Um, so Michael says most humans can't listen past their limited intelligence. The more they think they know, the less they honestly hear. Humans only hear what they want to hear. Play a record for a musician, and before he can listen to it, he has to know who it is. And once he knows who, he decides what it sounds like before he ever hears it, solely based on what he thinks he knows about the performer. What difference does it make who it is? What does it feel or sound like? How does it make you feel? That is what is important. So that, I mean, first off, that talks about what we were talking about at the beginning, where we just, we hear what we want to hear, and we just kind of wait for that silence so that we can get our part of the conversation in, um, which is unfortunate. But and then it talks about what I've said, so many times, is that if I focused on genre and let genre dictate my state of mind, I wouldn't have found Victor Wooten. I wouldn't have found Bela Fleck. I wouldn't have found all these musicians. I wouldn't have given Nickel Creek a chance. Like, I would be missing out on
Right.
so much great music. So I've tried to kind of get rid of that label because of that.
And it's funny, we talk about listening and we talk about giving an opportunity to not be hearing but to be listening, and I feel in a way, and this is going to sound funny at the moment, but I feel in a way this whole Zoom thing has brought that listening aspect a little bit back. Not
Mm-hmm.
the hearing aspect, but the listening, partially because we know that there's a delay in the discussion that you're having.
Right.
And I think you and I have become more aware of it because of the fact of this delay.
Mm-hmm.
And we do our best to not jump on each other while we're talking because of the recording process and to make sure that we didn't miss something and like that. And I think that in that odd way, this whole video chat Zoom thing has actually brought back that listening skill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that people still are just hearing, because I still feel that that's the case with some people,
Yeah.
but I feel
Yeah.
like the listening skill had to be brought back a little bit because you needed to give yourself a moment to be patient, to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that that person actually stopped talking.
Right.
And it's such a weird thing because it's the digital age that's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like I said, it was something I noticed even the other day. The past 2 days I was in an in-person meeting, but we had virtual people as well. And I feel like even on that end of it, where you have that mixed group, there is still better listening going on
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to miss anything,
Right.
and a lot less talk over even in the group. So if I'm sitting next to 5 other people, there's a lot less talking over each other because we know that on the other end in the virtual world, they're not going to hear what's being said.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a weird concept to say that because you don't want to admit this.
Right.
But like that's one element that is almost good.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I
Very
was
interesting.
looking up directions. I just want to see how far this lake was from my house. It's less than 5 hours away, so
You could do it.
I could do it.
For me, it'd be like 17 hours or something. I
Yeah,
think driving to
probably.
Nashville was 17 hours.
Yeah.
So if that's in Nashville, then
Yeah,
I would see
it's
you
a
in a
little bit
day.
further south of Nashville.
Yeah, so it'd be like 18 probably. 5 hour trip is not a bad trip. I would do that.
Mm-mm. Now, and in fact, Nashville's a big spot around here to go to. A lot of people do it.
Oh, really? They take the
Yeah.
trip down?
Yes.
Have you been have
Smoky
you been
Mountains.
to Nashville?
I have never been. No.
I have to say, when I went, it was back in the early 2000s. And
Hmm.
even for someone who was not a country person, like in the sense of country artists, it's a very cool place to visit,
Yeah.
especially as a musician. I'm sure it's been built up way more
Hmm.
because it's been 20 years. I would do the trip.
Yeah.
I would do
I'm
it.
thinking about
Even
it.
if, like one overnight, like even if you just did an
Hmm.
overnight, went down, stayed for the night, went
Yep.
back, do it. Do you have more on that? Because I have a little bit after that I highlighted.
I have a little bit after that too. So
All right, go
good.
go go with it.
Um, so they talk about listening and how the animals can feel the vibrations. Um, and he says the animals allow these vibrations to penetrate their whole bodies. The vibrations acting somewhat like vitamins. That is the best way to listen. Allow your whole body to pick up the vibrations using the whole body as an eardrum. And that's something that, like, you know, I've talked to you about it and I've kind of mentioned it. Part of what I want in my setups here at my house is I want the feeling of like being on stage with the musician. Like that, I want it to have that kind of feel because you can experience it in a different way. You can feel it differently. That's kind of what they're talking about here, where it's not just listening with your ears, and it goes back to that that experiment that Victor did with the speaker in his hands, and he spun around and did that thing. Like you can hear with your whole body, and it's not just a vibrational thing; it's an energy thing, which I talked about earlier. So, and just think about it as vitamins is kind of interesting because you think about what vitamins do to the body and think about what music can do to the body as well. It's a good thing, I think.
Oh no, I agree. I know that there are times that I'm picking certain music because of the vibration and energy that it puts through the speakers,
Hmm.
while I'm driving. So
Right.
I totally feel on that one. Um, I think that we do take for granted the fact that there are vibrations because we're hearing.
Hmm.
You know, when I got married and we had like half the wedding part, well, half the people attending the wedding were are deaf people,
Hmm.
sign language being their first language. And I know I've said this before on the podcast and even on the live show, just to see them get up and
Right.
dance to the vibration of the music. I mean, you were there, you saw it.
Hmm.
It's amazing to see. And you know, I was ignorant. I never thought about it that way. Like I knew how important music was. I knew what music can do to a person, and I knew
Hmm.
that there was vibrations involved with it, but I never thought of it to that extent.
Right.
And then I'm sitting here and I'm talking to my wife, and I'm like, "All right, so we're gonna get a DJ. Like, who's dancing?" Like I was ignorant.
Hmm.
And she goes, "Don't worry, everybody's gonna dance." I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, they'll feel the vibration." I'm like, "Really?" Like I never thought about it that way. And I
Hmm.
even said to her, I said, should we put the speakers on the ground? So I don't know if you remember that. I
Hmm.
had the DJ put the speakers on the ground and
Yep.
it made it's crazy.
Hmm.
And it's just like so when I read this, I'm like, oh, that's so true.
Hmm.
So true. That and then the paragraph after that I thought was interesting. I don't know if you have that highlighted.
I think I do.
Yeah. I don't you want I'll read it. If you want,
Yeah,
I'll
go
read
for
it.
it.
I liked it because of all the elements are used in the
Hmm.
paragraph. And Victor states, I'll have to work on listening like that, I noted. Trying to calm myself down, Michael spoke in a tone that seemed to match the peaceful place we were in. I, on the other hand, was speaking through emotion alone, which made it hard to articulate my true feelings. Also, the dynamic of my voice was way too loud for the quiet space we were in, causing my rhythm to differ from that of the woods. Maybe a different technique would help. Taking a deep breath, I tried to relax before I spoke my next phrase. Although slow, I was learning.
Hmm.
And I purposely emphasize those words because those are the elements throughout the whole entire book that
Yep.
he brought together for this purpose. And I thought it
Hmm.
was brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah. I really that was like, okay. yeah, he totally he's like, here we are again. We're back
Mm-hmm.
to where we need to be.
Yep. And then a little bit further along, Michael says, music, like all things, is vibration. That is all. Because we humans can hear music with our ears, we get stuck on the idea that that's all there is to it. Most of us wouldn't even consider the thought of seeing music or hearing a flower. What we hear, we do not see, and what we see, we do not hear. We think that music stops at the ears. That is a mistake. Vibrations can be felt in all places, at all times, even with the eyes. Music can be seen if your awareness is broad enough.
Right. And then the next paragraph actually talks about Victor experiencing um, living in Virginia and playing for a school of the deaf and having
Mm-hmm.
the same essentially experience that I had
Yep.
at my wedding. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was very cool because that talked to me, that spoke to me, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's true. I think we forget how powerful vibrations are. Like, just take music out of it for a second.
Right.
Just powerful, how powerful vibrations are. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
build weapons with vibrations and sounds.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Um, how far? I have stuff on the next page. I don't know where you are at.
I think I do too. Go ahead.
Mine starts. Vibrations, he continued, meaning Michael, are penetrating like ripples in the water. They bounce off you and they go right through you. An important thing to remember is that vibrations never stop vibrating. Think about that. Vibrations may change, but they never stop. That means that we should pay attention to the vibrations we are putting out there. And that sentence right there, that means we should pay attention to the vibrations we're putting out there. That sticks with me because I try my best
Mm-hmm.
every day to put out, and not to quote, I'm not trying to quote the Beach Boys, but I try to put out good vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really do. I try so hard. And that's why I feel bad when I get into, I don't want to say a bad mood, but essentially a bad mood. I feel bad because then I'm putting out this vibration of a bad mood. And then everybody's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. Because I don't want to put that vibration on them. I don't want to put that on them. Even though
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a genuine, are you okay? I still don't want to put that vibration out there. And I'm
Right.
learning that it's okay to do that because you kind of have to release that,
Mm-hmm.
or you can't get back to that other vibration.
Yep.
I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I do totally. It reminds me. Something happened this week. I was talking to a coworker. We have a lot of turnover in our company because a lot of it's based on on government work, and people rotate every 2 or 3 years. So one of the folks that's working with us, she rotates out in July, and she's heading up one of the programs, and she's like, I don't feel like I've finished here, and I feel bad that I finished. And I said, and I get that, but this program is 100% better than when you came. And I said to her, I said, if my goal is to wherever I go, I want to leave the place better than when I found it. And I said, you've totally done that. And I think that goes back to that. It's a vibrational thing. You have to be careful about the vibrations you're putting out. And if they're good, they're good. I think that kind of correlates. The other thing I thought was interesting is the whole pond and ripple thing, because that's big in the Awakening Spirits book that I'm reading, and that talks about the spiritual mind versus the physical mind. The spiritual mind being the pond, and then the physical mind being the ripples in the pond, and how they can kind of overshadow the spiritual mind. So interesting how it plays a part here as well. And that's what I was saying last week is everything seems to be interconnected, and the more I get into this, the more interconnected things seem to be, and the more right it feels. That's the right way to put it. I
you
don't
mean
know.
in the sense of reading the book and hearing like
Yeah,
another side of it in a sense.
yeah. Hearing someone's different point of view, and you know,
It's interesting. Now I
yeah,
want to read that book even more. I got to get a copy of it.
yeah. It's like I said, hard to find, but when you
I don't
find
need
it,
$100 copy though.
yeah, exactly.
I did find an app. I'm going to bring it up on my phone real quick just because I want to confirm the name of it.
Hmm.
Not sponsored by this app, but I found an app called Thrift Books, and I did find a copy on it, but I didn't purchase it. But I'm now thinking I might do it.
Hmm.
And I think it was only like 10 or 11 bucks.
Yeah,
I
I've been
figured
looking
whatever
at
the
half
condition.
price books. We have half price books out here. I've been looking at there. They don't have it. But
Well, if you happen to find a copy, let
yep,
me know, pick it up, and I'll
absolutely.
give you
Yep.
the money for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Um, I'm very interested now in reading. I do have his book, Grandfather, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm preparing to get into. I do have another book I want to read. I'm going to end up reading like 3 or 4 books at the same time. I'm going to be so confused. um, I don't know if you have any more on that page or on that.
My Kindle's doing stupid stuff, so go ahead.
I mean, it goes on to more about the fact that they were taught. He's talking about how he sings to the animals, and Michael. He doesn't think that Michael is being serious,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden Michael starts singing to the animals. Like he starts. It sounds like he's doing, like in the audiobook, it sounds like he's doing Mongolian singing, where it's the
Mm-hmm.
the two
Yep.
part the two yeah.
Yep.
And then Victor goes into talk about how he closed his eyes and he let the music envelope him. And he said he's never felt music the way he did at that moment, the
Mm-hmm.
way it took over his body with those vibrations
Yep.
and those energies.
Yep.
And it goes into, he goes back into talking about how when he was doing his meditation, he felt the tingle
Mm-hmm.
throughout his body. And this time he was allowing it to go throughout his whole entire body. So it's I feel like this part of the book is one of the real moments.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yep.
I feel like this is I mean, because there have been many a times that I've gone outside, even in my own backyard, and just sat down
Mm-hmm.
in quietness.
Mm-hmm.
And despite all the other noise pollution that's in the area, people playing music, whatever, there's still a connection to that natural energy that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm trying to do in my house is just because I don't have the time to always go out and find places to photograph. So I'm trying to like get like plants and flowers and stuff that'll attract other animals and stuff. A lot of them are birds because the birds will easily fly away when the dogs try to chase them. But like I've had hummingbirds like almost fly into me, just sitting there watching what's going on. And I mean, yeah, birds fly on my head, almost poop on me, but like whatever. Like, yeah, you know.
But I mean, when I visited, I remember we were talking about that, and I was like,
Hmm.
that's really cool, though. That's a smart idea.
Yeah.
Like, why not bring nature to you? And you're
Right.
in such a great area that I think you have a more variety of potential species of birds to come towards you.
Hmm. Yep.
You
And
know,
what's neat
like,
is so like Charlotte, I told you lives about 10 minutes away. She had a family of rabbits that lived under her shed, and a family of fox came out in there, ate all the rabbits, and now she's have a family of fox that live under her shed. She's got them on like her cameras, her the garage door camera. They've come up to the front door, so it's
wow,
really kind of neat. Scares my other neighbor. My neighbor next door has got 6 chickens, so I told her there are foxes in the area. So it's like it's weird, but it's cool. Just having all these animals surround you.
it is. It's funny because for us on Long Island, we're starting to get coyotes.
Yeah, we have them here too.
So they're starting to migrate. They're starting to actually come through the tunnels through the city.
Really?
Yeah, we were talking about this, and there's been a study being done, and they're saying in the next 10 years we could see a population of coyotes start developing on the island. I mean,
Wow.
because they're migrating out this way
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. Well, it's like deer. People don't
Mm-hmm.
think that deer swim, but that's how they get around. That's how they
Right.
got across. That's how they get onto
Mm-hmm.
the island. Like they
Yep.
swam across the sound. They swam in the ocean, like all that stuff. It's
Yep.
just it's crazy. But even back here, like I in our backyard, we had I have a wheelbarrow that has rocks in it because I was using it to fill in areas, and I never emptied out the rocks, and it would fill up with water while it rains. So it
Mm-hmm.
became like a bird bath for a while. So I've kind of just left it because it's actually cool because the birds will come in.
Mm-hmm.
And like we got a cardinal here, but you don't get anything crazy. The only thing that once in a while I'll see fly near work is a hawk.
Right.
Like, and it's so cool to see though.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a cool thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah, we got hawks, we got vultures, and then I told you I got that near work. I've got a family of bald eagles. They just had 3 babies this year, so I
Oh
haven't made my
wow,
way up this year yet. But it's on my list of things to do to get up there.
that's
Um,
awesome.
I was hoping to do it this weekend, but not going to happen. So
But see, it brings it to nature. Like
Right.
nature's like the first music.
Mm-hmm.
Like even before music was even created or performed, there was music in nature. There
Mm-hmm.
had to be. The wind
Yep.
blew a certain way. That's how animals probably communicated with each other
Mm-hmm.
through singing notes in a sense.
Yep.
Like we don't think about that, but that had to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's a theory, but it still had to be the
Yeah.
case. um
And this is one of my favorite lines in the chapter. Michael says, "All experiences, as well as music, are ordinary. It is up to you to add the extra quality that makes something extraordinary. But like most humans, you risk missing much of the present experience by putting part of yourself in future or past experiences. I highly recommend you spend this moment in the now so that you can experience, so the experience can share with each other all that you have to offer."
but
And
that wasn't Michael. That
it
was the
wasn't?
deer.
Oh, that was the deer. Sorry.
No, 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 but I want to make that clear that at this
Yep.
point a deer walked up to Victor
Mm-hmm.
and he heard this voice and he said
Mm-hmm.
it was coming from the deer.
Mm-hmm.
But now say what you're going to say because I think that plays a factor.
And so I was saying that there's just so much that we go through in our lives, and I find myself doing it too. It's like just before I was watching YouTube, and while I was watching YouTube, I picked up my phone and watched another YouTube video while I was watching a YouTube video. I went, "What am I doing? Like, this is stupid. Why am I watching a YouTube video just to watch another? Like, I, I can't watch two at the same time." So it's like, and we do that a lot with, when we have like get together with people. We spend so much time buried in our phones and that sort of thing. So trying to take time to spend that moment, and make the most of it, I think is important. And it's
And
something
it's
that I think
hard
we're
to do.
losing. It's very hard
Yeah,
to do.
very hard to do. And I think, especially for someone who's in the workforce and no matter where you work, you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly multitasking.
Yep.
You're constantly taking on multiple things at once.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have this task in front of you that you want to make happen, and then you're pulled away from it,
Mm-hmm.
or you have to jump into something else, and then you try to get back to it. It's like you lose that now, you
Yep.
lose that moment, even there. And I think that's another reason why it bleeds into our everyday lives because you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
miss something.
Right.
But you don't realize how much you're missing when you're doing
Mm-hmm.
more than one thing at once.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yep.
Um, doesn't the deer speak to them again? No.
I don't think so.
No, but I don't know if you have more after that because I do have something that it's a moment when Victor opens up his eyes.
Um, uh, this one always makes me laugh. So he talks about like his aura, and he at one point he says, "I wondered if my aura could get poison ivy." Strange
Yes.
thought, I know.
That's too funny. But yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah, that one always makes me laugh. So yeah, go
Um
ahead. Go what you were gonna say.
no, but after that he says he opened up his eyes
Mm-hmm.
because he thought it was daytime and because the aura and the glow of everything was so bright. And he said he looked at Michael and he said, I can see the music coming from him. It appeared to be mostly emanating from his mouth, but I noticed that it was also coming from his whole body, while at the same time entering his whole body. The music was connected to everything, and everything was connected to the music, including me. I could see vibrations bouncing off and passing through everything, allowing me to know that all things were alive and connected. He knew where all the animals were. He didn't even have to look. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that's so interesting.
Yep.
Um, because if you're someone who sees or feels energy in a way,
Mm-hmm.
responds to energy or sensitive to it, and you're sitting with a group of people, whether it's two, three, four, five, sometimes it could be a little intense.
Yep.
But at the same time, because they're so distinct, almost like a fingerprint,
Mm-hmm.
you know where each one of those people are.
Right.
And that
Yep.
that's what I took from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it reminds me of something that my choir director in high school told me. I didn't get it now. I didn't get it then. I still kind of don't get it, and it talks about what Victor was saying, and he always said that you know we are almost like the pipe of an organ, and that music is the air that flows through the pipe of the organ, and all we do is resonate with it. And it's like, makes sense. Still don't get it, but like,
Well, because
you know.
I think that's where the next chapter comes into play.
Right.
I mean, we're just a tool
Mm-hmm.
to create music, well, to bring the music out that's supposedly already there.
Right.
And I know we'll talk more about this in the next chapter, but going
Mm-hmm.
into how we use the different instruments that are out there to perform music,
Right.
you know. So and I think we'll touch upon that, but I understand that. I understand how it's like it's an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've always, especially with voice, I think that is the most emphasis that people have put on it. But using your whole body to sing is so important. Other instruments, like, yeah, you use your whole body, but I mean, there's talks like being grounded. Like, I know you went through Alexander technique, didn't you? At Post,
Oh, I loved it. Oh my god, it was amazing.
I never went through it, but I know there's a lot of like grounding and a lot of
100%.
you know,
Yeah.
and Ron would come and do clinics at our school, and one of the things he would do was have us take our shoes off and sing with our shoes off because we would be more grounded. It was just different. And, it was using your whole body to experience it. I've never really honestly tried it with other instruments because, like, with the piano, I'm using my feet. With the organ, I'm using my feet. It's kind of weird to be grounded. Like,
Well, but the thing is, if you look at it as so, I totally get what you're saying because as a singer, which is what my main instrument was, um, that was something that I worked on, and I still wish I still think I need to work on is using my whole body. But as a saxophonist, I was taught, and I know I've mentioned this before, to sing into the saxophone. So
mm-hmm,
if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that in the same way that I would sing.
right.
So it makes me wonder, like those drummers that play barefoot,
Mm,
or they play with their socks on, but like without shoes, they play
yeah.
without their. I know a few drummers that do not wear shoes when they're playing,
Mm-hmm,
and I've seen people play without shoes on the piano.
yep.
Like, is that grounding that you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about? Is it a comfort thing, or is it legit? Like, is there something more to it?
That's interesting because I was just there's a pianist that I follow on YouTube, and she just did a video about playing in high heels versus slippers,
Oh wow,
and she said she will never play on stage in high heels.
oh interesting.
So,
And I mean, it's probably different for everybody, but that's a
mm-hmm,
very interesting. Yeah,
yep,
yeah. But I think it's something that pertains to all instruments. I think it's just again, I think that's something we're going to touch base on more in the next
yeah,
chapter.
mm-hmm,
We're going to talk more about.
yep.
Um, I don't know where you go from here.
One of the last things I have, and I think it's an important thing. This is something that I always try to keep in my head, but only through the power of listening can you truly know anything. I think that's so important to, I don't know, to keep in the back of your mind at all times. I think listening is just so important because you really can't do anything. And I go back to, so many things that I've had happen in the last several weeks and months, and like the amount of people that just don't listen, like when I'm trying to share information with them. Staggering.
No, and you're absolutely right. I agree, and that's definitely one that I had highlighted and marked
Mm-hmm.
because again, like I said, I'm myself trying to work on being a better listener versus someone that hears.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always been a listener.
Yeah.
I think in my older age, I've become more of a hearer because you have experienced things and you feel that you just need to hear the little points that are being said, and that's not always the case.
Right.
And it's not that you don't want to listen to the person. It's just that you're like, oh no, I can help you. And it's like, well, maybe you can't because you didn't hear the whole entire thing, or
Mm-hmm.
you missed something because you're just hearing versus listening.
Right.
And he does state, Victor does state after that, he goes, I found that when I listened to other musicians more than I listened to myself, I played better. I realized that listening is a choice. The same is true in conversation. When I listen to other people more to myself, I know how to respond and support them in a better way. It also helps me know when to remain quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, like I said, I will totally say that I had a fault of that. It's not that I didn't listen. It wasn't that I wasn't paying attention, but you speak up a little too soon
Mm-hmm.
and you don't
Yep.
use your space to allow things to be said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep. I think that ensemble performing is something that everyone should do in their life because it teaches you how to
absolutely.
listen to other people.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yep.
Whether it's choral, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
band, whatever the case may be, you
Yep.
need to be in a group with multiple performers at some point in your life as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with you. Do you have more on this?
So a little while later, when Michael stopped singing, the animals kind of came up to him at the end. Um, Victor said it made me understand the effect that some pop stars have on their fans. Do the fans just want to touch them, or do they unconsciously want to connect with their vibrations? Um, which I think is, I mean, that's something that I think the more I think about the music I listen to, while it's similar in terms of style, I think that I'm I don't know, I guess I'm kind of more drawn to their vibrations or their energy more than their music.
You're probably drawn to the person.
Right.
They're giving out their energy and their
Mm-hmm.
vibration through the music. Yeah, no, I
Yep.
totally get what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yep.
I get what you're saying. Because just to precursor what you read, um, Victor notices that the remaining animals Michael walked up to, and they came up to him wanting
Right.
to get closer to the vibrations I could still
Mm-hmm.
see emanating from his body.
Yep.
And then that's when he brings up the pop artist thing. And it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Um, yeah. Just a you got to read the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
You got to read the book.
Yeah.
Hope people are reading the book, but you really need to read the chapter
Mm-hmm.
to really experience it. And you know what? If you want to experience it at a different level, get the audiobook because there is music in the audiobook that plays. And this whole chapter, there's Victor is speaking over the singing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's well balanced, it's well done.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't have anything more in this chapter, I don't think.
Nope.
Yeah. So it's crazy how much this book, you're making me want to get the book, what is it?
Awakening spirits.
Awakening Spirits. I'm gonna have to look tonight when we're done. See if we can get a copy. I'm gonna have too
Yep.
many books to read. I forgot to, I didn't know I knew how to read as well as I knew.
Well, like I said, Awakening Spirits, it's a challenging read. It's not an easy read.
But I'm
So,
okay with a challenging read. I'm okay
yeah.
with having to read a page again.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an audio version of it?
I haven't found one.
Okay.
I mean, the book is on the old side. I think it's,
Which is probably why.
yeah, early 90s. So I think it's 94 maybe. Maybe even before that. I don't even know.
Which would make sense because this book came out after.
Yep.
So if it is something that he read prior to writing,
Mm-hmm.
I would understand why it aligns in a sense to what you're reading.
Wow, it's gone up to $88 on Amazon
For a paperback.
for a paperback. Yep. Publication date April 1st, 1994.
So what makes it an $88 book?
I think the fact that it's no longer published and
Really, they're no longer publishing it.
right.
That's interesting. I wonder why.
Who knows?
Huh. I'm gonna have to do some research, see what I can find. That thrift store website may be the way to go.
Yep.
Thrift books. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into it. By the way, not to come off of what we were talking about, I watched the first Harry Potter movie on Thursday night.
Did you?
Yeah, I
What'd you
have
think?
started the process.
What'd you think?
It's good. I think, like I said, and I know I mentioned this before. I think at the time that it came out, there was so many people reading it, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
just put in front of me, and it was in front of my face, and I was kind of like, I'm not going to do this because everybody is doing it. And I think that now, I'm not saying that there's not a lot of fan base, and I think now that I've experienced like the parks and I'm older, and it was good, and I look forward to watching other movies, and I think that I'm going to attempt to read the books again,
Cool.
or I may do the audiobooks because I heard they're very well done. So
They are
even
very well
even
done.
if I don't read it, the audiobooks would be a great way for me to go
Hmm.
with this. So it was good.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very cool because John Williams' score is just, it really is well done for it.
Hmm.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny because I think Christopher Columbus directed the first one,
Yeah, I think so.
and he directed a few of them. Like, he has such dark undertones with a lot of his films.
Hmm.
So not to have taken away from the book, but I had to share that with you.
Nice.
So I've been the journey started. Uh I don't have much more to share on that right now.
Okay.
I don't know, do you?
Nope. I think we should just do our normal little housekeeping and
Yeah.
say goodnight or
All right.
see you next week. So
Or see you next week. Yeah.
yeah,
Do you want me to do the housekeeping?
it's up to you. I'm happy to do it. If you want to do it, you can do it.
You can do it. Go ahead, because I've done it.
You have done it. Yep.
Yeah.
So first off, thanks for listening. These episodes come out every Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. Why 5 a.m.? Because it used to be 7 a.m. and I used to get in the car and it hadn't downloaded yet, and then it annoyed me. So I moved it to 5 a.m. so that I could preview it on the way to work. So we do have a full season. So if you're just finding us, there is a full season of stuff. 33 episodes on this first season. We are 11 episodes into our current season, Victor Wooten's music lesson, obviously. And we're going to jump into his second book at the second half of this season. It's The Spirit of Music. We also do a live stream. Our live stream is on Friday evenings and Sunday evenings. This previous Sunday evening, we have done cover music suggested by our listeners. So I would tell you what it sounds like, but that's tomorrow night. So I don't know how it went, but I'll be putting that playlist together probably tomorrow, and there's some cool stuff in there. So, but every Friday evening and Sunday evening on Twitch, it's Turn on the Music. Sorry, twitch.tv/Turn on the Music 2. All of those links are in the description, as well as our social media, our Instagram, our Facebook, our Twitter, all that stuff is in there as well. There's also our Discord where we're trying to grow that community so we can chat with you and do all those things. These podcasts also come out on the YouTubes. They come out on Monday mornings, and they are slightly behind. They're about 2 weeks behind, but there is video that goes along with it. There's also shorts that come out on Fridays. Um, yeah, I think that's about it.
It's good. Yeah.
What did I miss?
No, I think you got it all.
Cool.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
See ya.
Thank you for listening.